Woosun had nothing to object to, so he agreed, but on the condition that he would actually leave once they made him a copy of the map. Our hero didn't know what the Black Dragon was up to or what his motives were, so he decided to be on the alert at all times. He also informed Benlong that he would be the one to carry our hero from now on and advised him to eat well before their journey. Though Benlong understood that the camel was the food he had captured, yet the unpleasant feeling that the flower was rewarding him did not leave him. Another day passed, and finally night fell. Our heroes set off again on their journey as planned. Woosun was pleased with his new transport. Despite its small wings and chubby body, Benlong flew quite fast, and Yin Yun didn't have to get tired either. Suddenly, the Black Dragon called our hero Uncle. Woosun irritatedly said not to call him Uncle since he wasn't that old. Benlong was about the same age as Yin Yun, and since she called Woosun Daddy, in his opinion, calling him Uncle was fine. Our hero realized that he was trying to sweet-talk him, so he told him to tell it like it was. The reason was the sword that Woosun was holding at his neck. Our hero wasn't going to put it away yet, as he couldn't guarantee his safety. Although Benlong was annoyed by this attitude, he had no choice but to accept it. After a while, Yin Yun announced that their water supply was running low. They needed to find a water source as soon as possible. Woosun was completely oblivious to this because after obtaining the desert melon genes, he didn't feel thirsty at all. Fortunately, according to Benlong's assumptions, they should have reached the oasis by the next night. Our hero once again irritatedly shouted at the Black Dragon not to call Yin Yun's sister, and also asked how he knew that there was an oasis ahead without even having a map with him. Woosun had the feeling that it was as if Benlong had been here before, so he asked, was he hiding something from them? The frightened Benlong replied that he wasn't hiding anything from them. He had indeed been here before, but only because he had gotten lost and wandered through the desert. Woosun couldn't prove his assumptions, but he still had a feeling that the Black Dragon was hiding something. Soon, they did indeed reach an oasis, which they were very happy about. Concerned Benlong noted that something was not right. It seemed to him that the plants were bigger this time than they had been before, but having never found anything suspicious, he also admitted that he might have been mistaken. Suddenly, Yin Yun pointed out some plant that seemed very unusual to her. The plant had a mouth and teeth, which reminded her a lot of her father. Our hero was not very happy about this comparison, and explained that it was just a big Venus flytrap. Yin Yun was very curious and started trying to touch the plant despite our hero's warnings. In her opinion, there was nothing to worry about, because to her eyes it was just a plant. But as soon as she touched the plant, she immediately fell into a trap, paying for her carelessness. Woosun immediately shouted to Benlong that they should help Yin Yun as soon as possible. The situation was getting worse by the second. The vines that suddenly appeared from the ground bound the dragoness tightly. Our hero didn't understand why the Black Dragon was slow, but he seemed to know what those strange plants were. As it turned out, a moment later, the owners of the vines turned out to be parasite plants. Woosun was furious at what kind of opponents they were constantly facing. Benlong, on the other hand, was scared to death. He knew that these plants sowed their seeds inside living organisms, and after killing the host, they controlled it as their puppet. Our hero didn't care at all what kind of plants they were. All he cared about at that moment was saving his daughter. However, the Black Dragon did not think so. Grabbing his backpack, he tried to quietly sneak away. In his opinion, it was already too late, and Yin Yun was about to turn into the same monster soon too. He advised Woosun to leave faster, but Woosun had no intention of abandoning his little girl. Calling Benlong a coward, he said that he thought he had feelings for Yin Yun. But even with those words, the Black Dragon had no intention of taking any risks. Our hero didn't intend to persuade him either and told him to get out quickly. After which, despite Benlong's warnings, he along with the gecko rushed towards Yin Yun. Since Woosun could not move on the ground on his own, he decided to use the trees as a slingshot. After pulling the vines tighter, he and the gecko flew straight towards Yin Yun. They had to save her at all costs. At the same time, the frightened Yin Yun tried to resist the plant. However, despite her attempts, more and more vines sought to bind her. Luckily, her daddy came to her rescue and immediately started chopping down the vines. Together with the gecko, they set about freeing her. The problem was that the parasitic plants were getting bigger and bigger. Leaving the release of the dragoness to the gecko, our hero decided to deal with the monsters himself. Even though there were many of them, and he was only one, he had no intention of backing down. The protection of his daughter was the first priority, so he fearlessly rushed into battle. Grabbing the parasite's tentacles, he pulled himself towards it. This was his tactic. In close combat, carrying a sword, he had the advantage. With a furious shout, he thrust his sword into the parasite plant. It was a victory. The parasite was finally dead. As it turned out, the Black Dragon never escaped. He continued to watch everything from a safe distance. He was very shocked that our hero had the strength to resist the monsters. But Wu Sun wasn't doing as well as it might seem. There were too many parasites, and even though he resisted, at some point, they managed to grab him. Fortunately, Yin Yun had already managed to free herself and immediately rushed to rescue her daddy. Together with the gecko, they managed to free our hero from the vines. Benlong, who was watching all this, was shocked by their bravery. He was well aware that compared to them, he was a real coward. At the moment when it seemed that our heroes had found a chance and hope for salvation, the situation took a bad turn again. Suddenly, a huge human hand emerged from the ground right behind them. Benlong realized what was coming. Overcoming his fear, he rushed to save Yin Yun and Wu Sun. At the last moment, he was able to block the hand that intended to attack the unsuspecting dragoness. Unfortunately, the blow was so strong that it threw the black dragon away. Realizing that Benlong had just saved her, Yin Yun worriedly asked him if he was all right. However, despite the blood, this time the black dragon had no intention of running away. He replied that such injuries were nothing to him. His fighting spirit was just the right thing as the situation continued to get worse. Suddenly, a second hand appeared from the ground, and a moment later, its owner appeared as well. It was a huge monster on which the Venus flytrap was parasitized. This time everyone was shocked. No one was prepared for the appearance of such a huge monster. Armed with a huge hammer and several times larger than our heroes, it seemed like an opponent that could not be defeated. In addition, the escape route was already blocked by other parasites. Benlong began to panic and regretted not running away when he had the chance. In his opinion, this was the end. Our hero remained cool-headed even in such a situation. He shouted to Benlong that if he wanted to live, he should fight. However, the black dragon was so frightened that he didn't believe that they could defeat the monster. Having been through a lot together, Yin Yun, the gecko, and Wu Sun completely trusted each other and were not going to back down in front of some mindless plant. The black dragon pointed out that although he said so, he was a plant himself. But Wu Sun disagreed with him. He was fundamentally different from other plants. He was a highly intelligent and talented being, and right now, he was determined to deal with this monster. Instructing Yin Yun and the gecko to deal with the small parasites, he rushed towards the giant. Sticking to his tactics, the dragoness grabbed the monster and began to rise into the air, intending to smash it to the ground. Even the black dragon had pride, and it had no intention of letting Yin Yun look down on him. Deciding to follow her example, he headed towards the other parasite. At the same time, the giant attacked our hero with a hammer. There was nothing left for him to do but try to block the blow with his sword. After flying away for some distance, Wu Sun began to ponder the difficulty of his situation. He couldn't move on his own, and the monster continued to attack. As a result of another blow, our hero was sent flying. He was thrown straight back to the trees. He immediately realized that he could use them to move around. Turning into Levi Ackerman, he was instantly right behind the Titan. In the next moment, he struck the monster's back. There was some green liquid flowing out of the wound instead of blood, which meant that this monster had completely turned into a plant man. At the same time, the monster came to its senses and attacked our hero again. Wu Sun realized that there was no point in attacking the giant. He had to deal with the parasite plant first. Thanks to the trees and his vines, he was able to move quickly and rush at the giant again. But this time, he was aiming at the parasite plant. This plant was not so simple either. When it sensed danger, it immediately hid behind a shield of vines. Our hero was surprised, but still he did not stop and tried to kill the plant. His attempt failed, and the giant attacked him again. Wu Sun successfully dodged the hammer, while the monster missed and hit himself. Our hero immediately realized how he could win. He moved towards the monster's head directly. His tactic was very simple. The monster would try to hit him, but would hit himself in the head. And just as he expected, it actually worked. The giant was defeated. At the same time, Benlong and Yin Yun also successfully defeated the other monsters. Seeing the defeated giant, the black dragon was shocked. He would never have thought that a flower could defeat such a monster. Yin Yun, on the other hand, was not surprised. After all, she had always believed in her father. However, the monster was still not finished off. The parasite plant was still alive and continued to control the fatty. In addition, the vines that appeared on his head were an additional problem. Wu Sun realized that he needed to break through the shield of vines at all costs. This was the only way he could win. Using his vines and trees as a slingshot, he once again rushed towards the monster at breakneck speed. But this time too, his target wasn't the shield, he was aiming for the neck, all to bring the big guy to the ground. Using his vines, he tied his arms to the trees. Once the preparations were finished, he asked Yin Yun to lift him into the air. The big guy started to resist, and our hero's vines threatened to break at any moment. The dragoness was worried, for it was too dangerous. But our hero was determined. The next moment he flew down at a great speed, intending to finish off the parasite once and for all. As he approached the monster, he thrust his sword into the shield with all his might. He managed to cut the parasitic plant in half, though with difficulty. They had finally won. Yin-Yun marveled at her father's exploits, while Benlong couldn't believe that some flower could finish off such a huge beast. The other parasite plants were still alive, so our hero ordered the others to deal with them quickly. After hitting the monster's head several times, they finally got rid of the parasite plants completely. During the battle, Wu Sun managed to lose almost all of his vines. However, thanks to the healing roots, it only took a few seconds for him to recover. The Black Dragon never ceased to marvel at the resilience of our hero, who sacrificed his vines to bind the monster despite the pain. However, he still had a problem. He didn't know how he could escape unnoticed. At the same time, Yin-Yun asked our hero if they could eat the wolf that still looked fresh and was no longer controlled. However, he immediately rejected the idea because there was a chance that there were parasite seeds in the corpse. But since Wu Sun had indeed spent almost the entire supply of roots, it wouldn't hurt for him to regain his energy. Fortunately, they had a black dragon with them, who still didn't know how to behave after such a betrayal. Our hero immediately ordered him to get them food, since he was the one who fled and used the least amount of energy. Unable to object, Benlong humbly agreed. As our hero had expected, the animals did indeed come to the water body to drink. After a while, the black dragon managed to catch one such careless animal. Although he was proud of his prey and considered himself a genius at hunting, Wu Sun was not particularly impressed with his prey. The meat of such a small beast was clearly not enough to eat properly, so he ordered him to bring more. Although Benlong was very annoyed by this treatment, there was nothing he could do about it. All he could do was to continue hunting. After a while, he came back in a bad mood, but with his prey. 2 foxes and 1 wolf, he thought. That should have been enough. On his return, he saw the others had already started to eat, and he also heard Wu Sun's cheers of joy. He asked Yin-Yun about what was going on, to which she replied to ignore it, for her father often spoke to the air. Benlong was hard to be surprised by anything anymore. Besides, in his opinion, all strong guys were freaks. The reason for our hero's joy was a new A-rank gene, which was a plant parasite. With its help, he could now parasitize and control dead organisms on his own. It was an incredibly cool gene, and our hero agreed to the fusion without a second thought. With the possession of this gene, his abilities increased multiple times over. He could now make his puppets hunt and fight for him, as well as do other useful things. Seeing how excited our hero was about the gene, Ruhua said that he had noticed his efforts and had specially chosen such a wonderful gene for him. Wu Sun appreciated his sincere appreciation for his efforts, but he was eager to try out his new abilities. And the first thing he had to do was to separate a part of his vine. After separating the vine, he attached it to the wolf's head. After a few moments, the wolf's eyes lit up and it began to show signs of life. After a while, it began to rise to its feet. When the wolf came back to life, the unaware black dragon was scared to death and thought that the wolf was just pretending to be dead. Benlong was scared to death when he saw the wolf come to life. He began to doubt that he had really killed it. At the same time, our hero found out that he could see everything that the corpse he was controlling could see. He really enjoyed scaring Benlong. However, after a while, the connection with the wolf broke, and the wolf fell to the ground. As it turned out, controlling such large creatures wasn't that easy. Plus, his vines were fading with time, causing him to lose control of the corpse. While the others looked at the wolf corpse in bewilderment and tried to understand what had happened, Wu Sun decided to continue his experiments. This time, he decided to use the corpse of a fox. While Benlong was trying to figure out the situation, a reanimated fox suddenly appeared behind him. It roared furiously, and in the next instant, it rushed towards the frightened black dragon. The latter closed its eyes in fear and swung its paw. The fox was thrown aside while the vines instantly faded. After the second experiment, our hero realized that the wolf was clearly more difficult to control due to its large size. However, once he could improve his gene, it was likely that he would be able to control bigger creatures. At the same time, Detective Benlong was investigating a case of corpses coming back to life. As soon as he saw the vines, he immediately realized that it was the work of Wu Sun. Our hero didn't deny it. He warned the black dragon that if he dared to misbehave, he would kill him and turn him into his puppet. Fortunately, Benlong was a pretty smart guy when it came to self-preservation, so he replied that Wu Sun had nothing to worry about. After a while, our hero chopped up the corpses and invited everyone to eat. They needed to recover their strength as well as replenish the nutrients in his roots. During dinner, the black dragon asked if he could ask them for a favor. He even offered 1/10 of all the gold coins in his backpack as compensation for it. Wu Sun was curious to know what made the stingy dragon spend so much money. The problem was also that for now, our hero didn't need the money, because he couldn't eat it. However, the black dragon was able to convince him that gold was the world's currency and would surely come in handy in the future. All he wanted was for our hero to help him steal something from the organization. Woo-sun didn't really like the idea, as he didn't want to become a thief. Benlong explained that the organization he was talking about was an evil gang. They used magic items to turn people or spirit beings into their slaves. They treated them like cattle and didn't care about their lives at all. He had encountered them before. He had seen them take over many people and spirit beings in his homeland. But recently he had seen them wandering through this desert, and so he decided that this was a great chance for revenge. And the reason why they could enslave humans and spiritual beings was because their leader had one powerful magic item. Once our heroes steal it, the bandit organization would no longer be able to cause trouble. Our hero was rather skeptical, as the arrival of a black dragon in the desert and finding the gang was too strong a coincidence even for an online novel. But Benlong wasn't backing down. He was worried about the lives of the helpless creatures, who without their help would meet the fate of slaves. However, even under such conditions, it was a matter of principle for our hero. He could not do such an illegal act. The black dragon thought otherwise. In his opinion, stealing an object from evil people and thus saving many lives was an act of heroism. Besides, he suggested to find them first and make sure that his words were true. It was a good idea, and our hero asked if he knew their approximate location. Benlong immediately replied that he had seen their convoy heading east toward a place called Black Mountain. According to him, those would definitely have to go around the mountain if they wanted to reach the spirit beings. Woo-sun immediately noted that Benlong was well acquainted with these people. He was okay with this venture under the condition that they would only observe from afar when encountering the organization. The Black Dragon was incredibly glad that he had agreed. He did not even become indignant when our hero set additional conditions, under which he had to bring them a lot of prey every day. However, after a few forays for prey, he began to regret that he had agreed to it so easily. The gluttonous flower kept demanding food, no matter how much he brought. In addition, the prey in the surrounding area was starting to run out. However, Woo-sun thought that these were just excuses and ordered him to bring more food. Benlong didn't like it, but he had no choice but to obey this strange flower. After a while, our hero could hardly eat anything. Yin-yun and Benlong didn't understand why he kept eating when his stomach was already full. Woo-sun justified it by saying that he just had a big appetite, but what he really wanted was the treasure chests. Once he was able to get enough of them, he ordered Ruhua to open them. This time, quite a few genin fell out to him. However, some new ones were not among them. Our hero immediately ordered the system spirit to make improvements to the genes he already had. He needed to strengthen his new gene as soon as possible because they clearly needed more power to confront these bad guys. Even though the Black Dragon didn't see the chests and system spirit, he felt Woo-sun's aura become stronger. On top of that, he also got a sixth vine. Benlong now realized that he was lucky that in the last battle, the flower didn't have such thick and strong vines yet, because otherwise, he might have died. After some time of traveling, they did manage to spot a traveling caravan. The Black Dragon recognized at a glance that these were the very villains they were looking for. The convoy was indeed huge, and in our hero's opinion, it was suicide to go there. Benlong replied that they didn't need to engage in combat, but simply steal that item stealthily. Suddenly, our hero's attention was drawn to the cage where the dragon was sitting. As if sensing something, he let out an angry roar. This immediately alerted the guards. When one of them approached the cage, he used lightning magic and ordered the dragon to shut up. The magic was quite effective, and there was nothing left for the dragon but to calm down. Yin-yun and Woo-sun were shocked. After all, these people had managed to restrain an adult black dragon. In contrast, there was pure rage in Benlong's eyes. In his opinion, they were only able to restrain that dragon because they had a special magic item. Realizing that Benlong knew that dragon, our hero asked what kind of relationship he had with it. The black dragon replied that the dragon inside the cage was his mom. The black dragon still remembered well the day his mother had taken him on that journey. They were heading towards the eastern mountains to see the sacred world of ice and snow. However, they were unexpectedly ambushed by humans, and it was because of the mysterious power of their leader that his mom lost all her power. He too was to be captured. However, his mom sacrificed her last strength to allow him to escape. He knew he had escaped like a stray dog, but he never dared to return to his town to ask for help from the tribe, as he didn't know if his mom would be able to hold out until they arrived. That was why he hoped to find helpers along the way, and together with them, save his mom. And as a result, his only hope was our hero. Yin-yun was very much touched by the story of the Black Dragon, and she offered Woo-sun to help him. Our hero was primarily worried about their own safety, for the risks were very great. He suggested to start by observing a bit more and try to attack at the most opportune moment. According to his plan, they first needed to steal the magic artifact to restore the power of the spirit beings, and already together, they would have no problem dealing with the bastards. Suddenly, Woo-sun was attracted by something. It was a sandstorm that was coming straight at them. Our hero immediately made the decision to hide in the nearby ruins. After a while, the Black Dragon worriedly reported that it was no ordinary sandstorm, but something worse. A swarm of locusts that gnawed on everything it encountered and sucked blood and moisture from everything in its path. He had encountered one before, but luckily his mom was with him at the time. Our hero immediately ordered everyone to get as close to him as possible. After a few moments, he created a shield of vines that would protect them from the locusts. Just as Benlong had said, the locusts would gnaw on the vines and suck out the moisture. To top it all off, they were also poisonous. But since our hero had a full supply, he could hold out for a while. As the situation began to get worse, the locusts began to gnaw more and more on the vines and tried to get inside. Yin Yun, Benlong, and the gecko began to try to prevent this. Suddenly our hero saw one of the men who belonged to the convoy. Before he could hide, he became a victim of the insects and turned into a zombie. Such a clear demonstration of the insect's capability made our hero even more careful. However, unlike this poor guy, the rest of the people coped with them quite well. Some used magic, some chopped with swords. They not only defended themselves like our heroes, but also took the initiative to attack. Fortunately, after a while, such a sandstorm passed, and it was over. During this time, they even managed to kill a few dozen insects. The people from the caravan, on the other hand, managed to kill at least 1,000. Our hero was already beginning to doubt that they would be able to steal treasures from such experienced opponents. If they didn't make at least one mistake, they would surely become slaves. The Black Dragon understood his fears, but according to him, he had already stolen half of that magic artifact. Seeing that Wu Sun didn't understand what he was talking about, Benlong explained that his mother's blow had broken it into 2 pieces, one of which he had managed to steal. This news made our hero very happy, and he immediately asked the Black Dragon to let him see it. Suddenly, Benlong started coughing, and after a while, the very artifact he was talking about flew out of his mouth. Wu Sun found it quite disgusting, however. In the Black Dragon's opinion, the stomach was the safest place to store such a precious item. All they had to do was simply wash it. Though it was a waste of their water supply, as soon as he washed it, the artifact glowed. Our hero was surprised, for it was the ultimate steampunk mechanical heart. The craftsmanship of its creator was truly amazing. He asked the Black Dragon if he had ever seen such a thing before. However, he not only met such an exquisite metal product for the first time, but also hadn't even heard of steampunk. At first, our hero thought that he had fallen into a fantasy world, where there was simply magic. However, as it turned out, there were also mechanisms here. This world could surprise, but he did not want to see cyberpunk or mechs here. But when it came to the artifact itself, Wu Sun speculated that it could be a real mechanical heart. However, how the owner used it was still a mystery. He asked Ruhua if he knew anything about the artifact, but he received a negative answer. Wu Sun's habit of eating everything immediately made itself felt. But fortunately, the system spirit managed to discourage him, arguing that he wouldn't turn into a mech, but would simply die. Since it was still unclear what to do with the artifact, our hero told the Black Dragon to hide it back. Since eating the artifact was not possible, Wu Sun turned his attention to the locusts. Ruhua again began to urge him to stop thinking about food all the time, but he wasn't going to listen to him. Since the poisonous locust was unable to harm him, it was destined to be eaten. Yin Yun was also worried because of the poison. However, for Wu Sun, it was not a problem thanks to the healing roots. As it turned out a moment later, eating the locusts was a great idea. After eating just a dozen insects, he had obtained 5 treasure chests. Wu Sun immediately imagined how many chests he could get if he ate all the insects the humans had killed. Unfortunately, those ones were also collecting locusts and using them to obtain toxins. After the convoy left, Wu Sun could only find a few insects on the ground. But there was no way he was going to lose even them. Benlong once again didn't understand why he was eating so much. In fact, it was simple. Our hero had a strategy to take every opportunity to eat and get stronger. After finishing the last insects, Wu Sun ordered the system spirit to open all the chests. Fortunately, this time, in addition to the genes and coins he had already obtained, he was able to get a new B-rank gene. It was called Dongliang Caltrop. According to the description, it was a perennial herbal plant that was highly toxic. Our hero, as always, was excited about the new gene, and told Ruhua to immediately perform the fusion. Now its thorns were toxic and could cause fatal intoxication. But for now, its toxicity was too weak and could only cause paralysis. Still, even that wasn't bad at all. While Yin Yun and Benlong were puzzled by our hero's strange behavior, he told them to prepare to leave. There was no way they were going to lose track of the convoy. After a while, the convoy led them to the city. Everyone except the Black Dragon was delighted by what they saw. From his experience, Benlong assumed that those stopped here to replenish supplies and rest. He had never heard of this group directly attacking gatherings of townspeople, but only catching loners. Since they too were tired on the road, our hero suggested taking a break on the outskirts of town where there were few people. After finding an abandoned warehouse, they decided to stay there for now. According to Woosun's plan, Yin Yun was supposed to transform into her human form and use the gold coins to buy supplies. However, the problem was that she didn't know how to interact with humans at all. Fortunately, they had Benlong with them, who could also transform into human form. He was the one who volunteered to go along with Yin Yun. Our hero was surprised that Benlong could transform into human form. According to the Black Dragon, he also looked very handsome. Woosun was skeptical about his words and asked if he knew the meaning of the word handsome. He told Yin Yun to transform into human form and show him her appearance. Yin Yun's human form was indeed beautiful. Even Benlong, who was familiar with many other dragons, was amazed. Not only did she look beautiful, but she was like a real human. The Black Dragon was highly motivated and said that now it was his turn to show off and prove that he was worthy of Yin Yun. Already in the next instant, a swarthy young man with a powerful physique appeared in front of them. Everyone was amazed at this transformation. Seeing their reactions, Benlong asked if they were mesmerized by his stunning charm. But that was far from the case. And besides, he was only a half-dragon. However, according to Benlong himself, his form was the perfect combination of durability and beauty, and besides, it was the most popular in his town. Our hero agreed with him, but be that as it may, his difference with a human was still great. Since the Black Dragon and his mom had been in this city before, they had two sets of disguises. Yin Yun got a hooded cloak, while Benlong was wearing typical Eastern clothes and a turban. The transformation was complete, and now it was very difficult to distinguish them from some travelers. Although Woosun wasn't particularly happy with their disguise, their problem was still interacting with people. However, Benlong said that they could rely on him in this matter. Yin Yun was a little concerned that her daddy and the gecko were alone here. However, in our hero's opinion, there was nothing to worry about. Pulling his head into a cannon, he was indistinguishable from some kind of plant. Realizing that there was really nothing to worry about, Yin Yun and Benlong headed towards the city, promising to return as soon as possible. After they left, Woosun couldn't get rid of the feeling that his daughter had gone on a date and he was sitting at home alone as her father. The next morning, a man who looked a lot like Mario's brother Luigi arrived at the warehouse where our hero was. He heard some noise and whispering, so he came to check it out. Suddenly, a cannon caught his attention. Its design, material, as well as its craftsmanship were top-notch. However, when he saw the straps, arrows, and weapons, he couldn't help but wonder why such a treasure was used as a gun rack. However, what he didn't expect to see was the strange and terrifying flower that had already suddenly appeared from the cannon the very next moment. The poor man was so frightened that he unconsciously fell to the ground. Woosun was frightened himself, as he didn't mean to scare the man so much. Checking his breathing, our hero made sure that the man was alive. Taking a closer look at the man's face, Woosun remembered that he had seen him in a group of human adventurers before. Suddenly, the man opened his eyes. As soon as he saw our hero, he immediately jumped aside in fear. In front of him was the same terrifying flower that had frightened him. Thinking Woosun was a monster, he began to apologize and asked not to kill him. However, our hero had no intention of doing so. He was curious about where the rest of the group of travelers he had come to the city with were. As it turned out, the man also remembered him and saw the same strange plant riding a dragon.